Welcome to Moderate to Severe, the podcast where we will dive deep into what it means to be a man today and tackle the real and raw issues facing us. We've created a safe space for setting aside the bravado, peeling back the armor, and talking about what's really going on inside. Mental health is no longer just a buzzword. It's real life and something that I, just like many of you, suffer through daily. I'm Jonathan Scott, and I want to focus on the value of vulnerability through personal stories, expert insights, and practical tools to help you take care of your mental well-being and redefine what strength really is. We'll dive into the everyday battles we face, from handling stress, overcoming self-doubt, and figuring out how to ask for help and accept it. Each week, I'll be sharing my own experiences, along with stories from other men, mental health experts, and everyday people who have seen or been through it all. So if you're here to listen, to learn, or just feel less alone, you're in the right place. So get comfortable and let's break the silence together. Hi, and welcome to Moderate to Severe. I am your host, Jonathan Scott, and here we are on episode number 5. Started about a little more than a month ago on November 10th when I released my first standalone episode. No interview, me just talking about why I was doing this podcast and what my reasons were. And here I am starting episode 5 with a great guest today and really starting to think and kind of, I don't want to say reminisce because I've only been doing this for about 5 weeks, but start thinking about the progress in the journey. The journey pretty much started when I was in Sierra Tucson. And for those of you that are first-time listeners, I've been battling depression and anxiety for the last 40 years. The last 20 years have been somewhat worse, with the depression coming in about 17 years ago, but the anxiety was always there. Never talked about it. As a matter of fact, I talked to a buddy in school today where I picked up a shirt for him that I bought, and he said, "Where have you been, man? I haven't seen you. You haven't come down to the office." And I said, "Well, I actually just got back to work 3 weeks ago." And he's like, "Where have you been?" And I said, "Well, I took 3 months off to kind of get my life in order and, right the ship." And he's like, "Right the ship for what?" And I said, I went away for a month to Tucson, Arizona, because I was battling severe depression and anxiety, and his face hit the ground. No idea at all. He was like, "I can't believe he just told me that. I'm totally floored." And that response is the reason why we kind of started this Moderate to Severe campaign, to kind of bring light to this mental health issue and just other issues that are plaguing, the society nowadays that we don't talk about and there's a big stigma about. Now, I did fly out to Tucson, Arizona at the last Saturday in August, and I stayed there till about the last, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday in September. So about 27, 28 days. Now, when I was there, it was life-changing. I don't think anybody can go away and really put the work in and not have like a life-changing experience when you go away to something like the wellness/rehab center that I went to. I came back with a whole new outlook on life and exactly what it meant and, what was I supposed to be doing. My time down there was spent, as I mentioned before, in the Veterans Lodge, and they are some of the greatest people on earth. But just talking with them, when I was in high school and college, I was very friendly and outgoing and did a lot of things and had a lot of friends, was always kind of like the center of attention. And as I got older, I started to kind of withdraw myself a little bit and not be as outgoing and friendly and personable as I was. When I was down in Sierra Tucson, I kind of regained that person that I was. And I liked it. I didn't like being the quiet person or the quiet dad, as my kids have called me. I liked being Bing Bong, as I was known down there. And one of the things when you're down there is your time is structured. So my days were structured for me. I had 3 separate times where I ate a day, 3 separate times where I was allowed to have technology, and then classes were, filtered throughout the day. During the time, I spent most of the time talking to my family on the phone, although the times were 3 hours different. My family did a nice job of, making time for me when I was talking to them. One of the other things I did was I kept an eye on social media. And our guest today really had a major impact. Our guest today has gone through a lot. I've known her for a very, very long time, although we weren't close friends. But as I'll talk about today, a lot of her posts were very inspirational for me and kind of got me going. And I'm a lurker and a stalker on social media. I don't know if stalker is the correct word, but we'll go with lurker. I don't post a lot, or I didn't post a lot. Now, if you follow me, you know that I post every day. And a lot of people will ask me about the things I post every day, and they'll say, where did you get them from? Where did you read them from? They all just come to me. I spend a lot of time quiet in the car on the way to work, the way home from work, driving my kids different places. And I do a lot of thinking. And a lot of times the things will just come to me, or they'll be said to me in passing. A lot of the ideas I get are from listeners who will talk and they'll write something, or a guest and they'll say something. But I really think that they need to be said. I think a lot of people have these ideas that I talk about. I think a lot of people have them in their mind. They kind of have them in some format, but they don't really go out there and live by them or think about them at the right times. I think when we get our day started in the morning, one of the things that we do is we do positive affirmations where we talk about positive things that we're going to do, going to be, things of that nature. I think starting your day with a goal and a plan is one of the best ways to ensure that your day is maximized to what you want it to be. That's kind of why I started each day with one of those little sayings. You may like them, you may not. They may be for you, you may not. That's totally up to you. But all of them are authentic and real, and I'm just going to keep doing it. Now, when I was down there, as I was saying, I was outgoing, friendly, and just knew everybody. And when I came home, I said one of the things I was going to do was I was going to try to really live my life to the fullest, get back to that, and just go forward, move forward with this new kind of mission that I have. So one of the first persons I reached out to was today's guest, Carly. And like I said, a lot of her posts were inspirational. We'll find out her story. And some of you may have heard me remark about my producer, but I don't really have a producer. But when I talk about my producer or the person behind the show, I'm pretty much talking about Carly. Carly is a phenomenal human being. Carly and I have known each other a long, long time, but we were never really friends. We were friends in the essence that we knew each other. We didn't not like each other, but we never hung out, or back in the day, I would never call her on her parents' line and ask if she wanted to go to the movies with her friends and my friends. Our groups of friends just didn't cross, and that was totally fine because we saw each other in school. And, we were good enough friends that we would just say hi and be cordial to one another. But Carly's posts and her mission kind of got me thinking. And I was talking to her when I got back from Sierra Tucson through Messenger, and I was telling her how inspirational she was. And the idea of the podcast came up, and Carly does have a podcast, the Chemo Coffee Talk, which is phenomenal, which kind of gives away one of the things that she's battling. But I told her how it was very inspirational for me, because when you're down there, sometimes you get this idea of this imposter syndrome, and do I belong here, and am I really supposed to be here? And I knew I was. But, besides battling that imposter syndrome and then battling the fact that you're down there, it's nice to hear positive affirmations from home. And I got a lot of positive affirmations from home when I made phone calls. But it was the other ones that I would get from hearing from people. And nobody really knew I was away. There was a handful of people. And as I was down longer in Tucson, I called more and more people, and I let them know, like, hey, I'm okay. I'm down in Sierra Tucson. I am, getting my life back on track, but I'm definitely okay. So when I came home and I reached out to Carly, it was more along the lines of, hey, Carly, I want to thank you. I've been lurking. Your stuff has really been helpful to me. I hope all is well, and, things of that nature. And when we got to talking, she mentioned, you should do a podcast. Now, as I had mentioned before, I have a lot of great ideas and thoughts of things that I think I want to do, but I never follow through with them. Everything has to be perfect. You could ask my wife. I have molding that needs to be done in my house, and my father-in-law has done it because I don't think the corners are going to match up perfectly. So I will not start things unless I think they could be done perfect. So when I talked to Carly and she had mentioned the idea of the podcast, I kind of just gave her some hot air and was like, yeah, maybe I'll do that. That's a great idea. Totally forgot about it. Didn't think I'd hear from her for another couple months or something. And I get a message about 3 days later and asks me, how's the podcast going? And I wrote back and I said, Carly, what the hell are you talking about? And she's like, the podcast you're going to do, the podcast. And I was like, Carly, I'm not doing a podcast. I was joking. There's no podcast coming. And, going back and forth, she kind of pretty much just said, Jonathan, you need to do the podcast. Do one podcast, see how it goes, and we'll go from there. And that was pretty much the birth of this moderate to severe. From there, I've been all in. Since that first episode was released on November 10th, I've released, which will be my 5th episode. I've talked to multiple branding agents, talked to website designers, have started writing more, started doing more in the poetry. And I really feel that I owe a lot to Carly for kicking it off on this battle. And that's one of the things, is that you never know who's going to come back into your life. And there are some people who are not in my life who may never be in my life again. And there are other people who, I had no idea they would come back into my life. Carly is one of them. Like I said, Carly and I were just friends in high school. We waved hello. She would roll her eyes at me and the rest of our buddies as we goofed around, and she took everything serious. But there were a lot of things about Carly that I learned in the interview that I did not know, and a lot of things that maybe I should have taken the time to get to know a little better. I had no idea that 34 years later, Carly and I would be almost as thick as thieves, talking every single day, multiple times about different topics, sharing, personal family stories, and just becoming really close friends. I think the only thing that's stopping us from hanging out on a daily basis is the fact that we live 3 states away. But still, I would have no problem going up to one of her book signings if I needed to ask her a question. And that's just really much the gist of it is, you never know who's coming back into your life. You never know who's going to show back up. And one of the things that being down there in Sierra Tucson has taught me is that you need to be open. You need to be open to what way the wind blows. I'm not a church-going man, as I don't go every week. We talk about it. We don't go. We hit the big ones, we hit Easter, we hit Christmas, we hit the confirmations and the communions, but we don't go every week. But that doesn't mean I don't believe that there isn't a higher being or a higher something out there that's kind of pushing me. And I really feel that I found that when I went away. I feel that spirit, or whatever you want to call it, pushed me to reach out to Carly that one day. Could have reached out to anybody, but for a reason it was Carly. Kind of pushed me to take her lead and go with this moderate to severe, which, as I had mentioned numerous times, has been extremely cathartic for me. Every aspect of it, from the planning to the producing to the listening to it, to the feedback I get. I love feedback, and my email is very easy. It's Jonathan, Jonathan, at moderate2severe.com. And I do get emails, the comments, the likes, everything on my social medias has kind of come full circle for me. I was never a social media guy. I was never putting anything out there in public. Like I said, I had been quiet about this for the last 20 years at my job. Nobody knew except for a select handful of people that absolutely had to know. But something pushed me to talk to Carly, and something pushed me to start this and, to make other decisions that I'm kind of making in my life. And I think that's one of the things that we don't listen to and pay enough attention to is, are we listening to or paying attention to those signs that we're getting? I believe that, I don't want to say everybody, but I believe most people have a higher goal that they were set here for. I believe that if you want something, you can go out and get it. And I know that sounds cliche, but I never believed that. I thought that I was going to be a special ed teacher. I was going to die a special ed teacher, and that there was nothing else out there for me. But I don't feel that way anymore. I feel that I've been, I don't want to say enlightened, because that's kind of corny, but I feel like something has kind of directed me or pushed me in this direction. I know medication-wise, I feel the best I've ever felt. I know my focus, I've talked about my struggles with ADHD, have been tremendously improved. Do I still go off task? Yes. Do I still get a little hyper? Absolutely. Do I still need to be calmed down by people sometimes and tell me to take a deep breath and just relax? Of course. But I feel that my ability to complete tasks like the moderate to severe, like the podcast, like everything that's going on, have really been, not impacted by the struggles I've had. And that's pretty much how I came to be here today and why I'm talking about Carly. I usually don't talk a lot about the guests before we interview them, but I just want everybody to really get the understanding of, where I was and how important Carly is to me in this process. Outside of my family, she's probably the most important person and supportive person that I've known to have a hand in moderate to severe. And, for that, I'll be eternally grateful. So without further ado, I would like to take this opportunity to let you guys listen to the interview with Carly Fauth. Thank you. All right, folks. So here we are back again. Time for the interview. So the person we're going to interview today is a little bit ironic. I have known her for about 20 years, maybe longer, maybe 20, maybe close to 25,
No,
26.
it's closer to 30. Okay.
It is closer to 30, but you weren't supposed to talk yet, but that's okay. You can do whatever you want. So the person who we have on, it's weird. We knew each other well in high school. We saw each other at our 25th anniversary, maybe our 20th anniversary. And then we kind of have reconnected over my whole trip to Sierra Tucson. So Carly, go ahead. Tell a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Jonathan. Thank you for having me on your show. It's a reunion, not an anniversary, just to correct you.
I need a lot of correcting.
That's okay. So yes, Jonathan and I went to high school together. But then he reached out. When was it, Jonathan? Like a month ago, I think?
Yeah, no, it was actually when I was in Sierra. I think I reached out to you and just told you that I was using your stuff as an inspiration.
Yes. And as a backup, I just got over, well, the journey's never over, I don't think, but I fought breast cancer. I was diagnosed in February of this year, and then had a double mastectomy and then pretty aggressive chemo. So I have kind of taken the lemons that were served to me and made some lemonade. So I'm trying to take the fear out of the cancer journey and on social media and through a podcast. So that's why you reached out to me in the first place, is that I think my messaging resonated with you. And I think that was a really nice thing that you did that, because my point is, what I hope when I'm putting stuff out there is that the struggles are all different, but the feelings around those struggles are pretty much the same. So the fact that you could reach out to me and say that you could, like, my messaging resonated with you was a huge compliment, because that's kind of what I've been trying to get across. So thank you for reaching out to me, and thank you for the compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a little different of an interview. It's more of a conversation, because of the fact that we do know each other. And not to make light of the situation, but Carly rolled her eyes at me for 4 years during high school because I was a big pain in the ass. But in all seriousness, see, there you go. We are confirmed. Yep. So, like I said, I'm not an expert on everything, but I am an expert on me, and I know when I'm a pain in the ass. But, in all seriousness, I talk about my trip to Sierra Tucson, and we only had the phone for limited time, and I would watch reels, and I've always been a lurker and a stalker. And it's kind of ironic. And the reason why is Carly just mentioned her diagnosis, and I never mentioned one thing to her during her diagnosis. I never came out. I don't even think I hit the like button, was because I didn't know what to say. And now doing this podcast, I look back and I'm like, I did to Carly what I think so many people do to those with mental health issues. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to react. All right. So before we go through your journey, let's start at the present time. So how today are you doing? How are you today on this Sunday afternoon is when we recorded this. How are you doing both personally and professionally?
I'm doing really well. Personally, I'm like in the post cancer journey, I guess, and getting used to my new normal of having gone through something that was really challenging and scary, and just kind of adapting to this new kind of, I don't know, always being a little scared and dealing with those feelings. Professionally, I'm doing well as well, because I am a fitness instructor, and my big thing was that I moved through cancer. So I never took a day off of working out, even on my toughest day of chemo. And I taught throughout chemo. And I think movement is really what saved me. One of the things that really saved me through my journey. And so now that has become my passion. It was before cancer, the idea that movement helps you physically and mentally, but even post cancer more, because I really want to help other cancer patients understand how important moving is. And I totally understand you're not going to want to do it, but it helps with the side effects and it helps keep you mentally strong.
Okay, so let's give yourself a little plug. Fun Fit Carly is where you started as a
No,
fitness instructor.
Fit Fun Carly.
Fit Fun. Fit
Fit Fun
Fun. I
Carly.
always mess that up. Fit Fun. Okay, so you dive into it
That's
and you're
okay. A lot of
doing
people do.
you're doing these workouts, okay? And then you get the diagnosis. All right. So you're working out.
Yes.
I see you online. I see you online. I'm watching them. I'm not doing the workouts because as that time I was not working out. I didn't do anything. I could have gotten the free ones. I didn't do it. What happens with the diagnosis there? And you just kind of hit on it a little bit. You kept working
Yep.
through it, but explain the moment when you were diagnosed. And I know you talk about it in your book a little, but explain the moment. What goes through your
Yep.
mind?
Yeah, well, I was in shock because I've always lived a really healthy lifestyle. That's been my thing. So as far as who, like me getting breast cancer, it was just like, what? Are you kidding me? I had just started my business. It had been a side hustle for a really long time. I was a fitness instructor on top of like other jobs that I was doing, but I decided to stop the real job. I have to try to keep myself from saying real job, because what I do now is a real job. But I always thought of this as just something fun. But then I decided to make it my full-time job. And I was just on the upswing of everything like really coming together. And I was pushing out all these great things. And then I got this diagnosis and I thought to myself, what the heck am I going to do? I can't think of any worse profession to be in with a cancer diagnosis or any health crisis than a fitness professional who actually like has to do the classes, because it was just me. It's a virtual platform. So people are working out with me online. It's not like I can delegate it to another teacher. It was just like me running the show. So I thought to myself, oh, how am I going to go about doing this? And then I read a really good book called Moving Through Cancer. And it was all about the importance of moving through your treatments. And I kind of used that as my Bible, that I was going to be able to kind of make something out of this and show people that it could be done, and kind of be proof of what the book was talking about, that even on your worst days, if you can walk to the mailbox, that's a win, and that will help you with the side effects, because it's brutal.
Yeah, and you made a good point, when we were talking and you said that, you had to take it on yourself and think about it and, continue moving forward. There was no one else. I'm going to skip it and maybe just ask you a question right now and just get right to the meat of what I want to know is, what does the other side of that look like? I know you have talked about, your journey, and we'll continue talking about that, but what do you want, like, the husbands, and what
Mhm.
can you give the husbands and the boyfriends and the brothers, the men of the women? Because I find it to be almost like mental health issues. Like the men don't know what to say, and the husbands don't know what to say. What would you give as your guideline to listen? If I had to do this, I don't want to ever say over again, but if I had to give a couple key points, what are your key points to being with a spouse who was just diagnosed with breast cancer? What are you looking for in that time?
So I think it depends on the individual. I think it depends on your personality. I am fiercely independent, and I married someone, Tim, who you know, who kind of knew how I operate, and he's kind of like the Carly whisper and knows how to get me to communicate and knows how what I need and what I need to hear and when to push and when to hold back. But I think the biggest thing for me was because I have always been fiercely independent is let me decide, or let the person who's going through cancer, let them still maintain control of the situation. Because if you start taking things away because you think that they're not going to be able to handle it, or you want to make it easier for them, you may be doing that in a way that you think is taking care of the person, but you're actually taking away their control. And when you have a diagnosis, you feel like your world is spinning out of control. And if you are a control freak like me, it's horrifying. So the idea that like Tim just let me decide if I could do things and if I couldn't. And he may have thought like she's doing too much, but he trusted me enough to know that I'd be able to ask for help when I needed it. So I think my biggest tip would be don't take things off someone else's plate unless they say they want it to be taken off their plate, because it's you want to hold on to as much normalcy as you can, because it's a very scary time.
I think that's excellent advice. I mean, for me or for any other male listeners. And
Mhm.
even other, I think that would really go to anybody out there. I think I could see mothers with their daughters doing the same thing, or, sisters or friends. And, that whole idea of letting people tell you when they want something taken off their plate,
But
and keeping,
I also think it could be flipped too, from like as the cancer patient to the person who's taking care of you. Don't I also think it's very important for the caretakers to feel like they have some control over the situation. So as the patient, if you're trying to make it easier for the caretaker and take things off their plate and not give them the opportunity to help you when you need it,
right,
that can be just as frustrating for them from a mental health perspective too. There's all this like
absolutely.
everyone wants to be able to control something in a situation that's there you don't have any control over.
Now, I read the book. So, Carly did write a book, Pray for the Bear, An Ordinary Person's Guide to Unlocking Extraordinary Personal Strength. And chapter 12, and this, and I'm tying this back in, so just wait for it. You talk about your crushing anxiety and depression that you had in the 7th grade. And we have talked, and you said, that it was in high school too. Now, my question is, did that come back after the diagnosis? Did the anxiety come back, or you seem to be in a different state of mind? And that's my question. Like, was that something that was revisited, or was that something that you had handled, or did it creep back in a little bit?
So I think I've always had that as a kid. And then, like I said in my book, it got really bad in 7th grade. So I kind of had to build my way back. But I think I credit my parents for um, there is no normal, but pushing me to normalcy. Like I didn't want to go to school. I'd cry every day, but they made me go to school, and they said, you have to go to school, but when you come home, we can talk about this. They got me help. I had a therapist. I even had a psychiatrist at one point. I was on medication. They were very open to talking about it. So I think they allowed me, as painful as it was at the time, to go through the hard things. They didn't try to cushion me from it, so that I learned from those experiences as I moved forward. I'm not saying the anxiety I don't think it ever fully goes away, but each time it crept up, I was encouraged to deal with it and to talk about it. And so then I could tackle, like it came into like an eating disorder in college. Like it always like it, if you don't, it doesn't go away. It goes into something else. And then it's just
Yeah,
overcoming each little phase of your anxiety. It always comes back. So I think the fact that I was able to tackle it as I went along and had the space to do that and get really uncomfortable, it actually helped me with the diagnosis.
that's awesome. I wish that in high school, maybe I let the side comments go a little bit, because maybe we could have became closer friends and you could have talked to me, and maybe I could have started battling these things a lot earlier than I did.
Yeah.
Um, so we talked about the fact that Carly has a book published, that Carly has Fit Fun Carly. We talk about the fact that Carly has battled cancer. Now let's talk about the fact that you started a podcast. Now, I was not the original one in this conversation to have the podcast. You started a podcast. tell us about your podcast and, what it focused on and that it's still going on today.
Yeah. So when I heard that I had to get chemo and it was very aggressive, it's about the most aggressive chemo you can have, I was scared to death, but I don't like that fear. And I feel like, again, the control freak inside me needed to control the situation. So I decided, what better thing to do when you go into chemo than to start a podcast from your I honestly don't know how. I think I was on somebody's podcast and she was doing it from her phone, and it was a couple weeks before I was starting chemo, and it hit me. I was like, I should do a podcast from my chemo chair. So I quickly figured out how to go about doing it. I didn't ask permission from Dana-Farber. I thought they'll shut me down if they don't want me to do it, but I want to show them what a good idea this is. And it kind of took off from there. So it started out as a way for me to cope with my situation, like reframing what I was doing. I wasn't going to chemo. I was going to my podcast studio, which is bizarre. But it worked for me. And then I realized I was helping a lot of people because I didn't know anything about chemo. I didn't know like what do you do? Like, what happens when you walk in the door? I thought this is a great way for me to be like reporting live for chemo to try to take the fear out of it for everybody else. So that's what I did. I did it every single chemo round. I interviewed the chemo buddy, the person that chose to go to chemo with me, and I kind of followed the same framework of picking something out about that person that they had taught me. Like, so some of them aren't even like my best friends, but it was real special relationships. I was able to like feature them, tell them what I appreciated about them, and have them share lessons that they could share with other people about how to be a little bit more like them. So I did that for every round of chemo. And then when I was done, I decided to keep going from my kitchen and then just keep interviewing doctors and anybody, like caregivers, anybody who's had cancer, not specifically breast cancer, but just try to be a place where people can come and listen to positive stories or helpful stories about people going through cancer, maybe things that you've never really talked about before or heard anybody talk about before. So keep it lighthearted, keep it positive, even if it's a difficult subject to talk about, but I love it. It's called Chemo Coffee Talk.
Nice. Now, I'm going to ask you, and I think you answered it in your answer. You answered my question in your answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway for the people listening who may not have followed, because with my ADHD, I would not have followed it and picked up on it in high school, nor would I have picked up on it right now. But since I'm running this interview, I picked up on it. How does the podcast make you feel as an individual? Because I know for me, doing moderate to severe, it's very cathartic for me. It is such an emotional release for me to be able to talk about my travels and things of that nature. The wall is down. I don't feel there's a stigma attached to it. When you were, and like we have talked about numerous times, I look at who watches, but in the end, that's not what matters. What matters for me is my journey, and what matters for me is the fact that I feel good about doing this, and I do receive emails and messages. So just getting one or two really kind of sends me on my way. Did you get that same feeling by doing your Chemo Coffee Talk?
Yeah. I got, even if it's just like one person who said the episode helped them, it would completely make my day. And it also, like you said before, it fills my cup because I can talk. It helps to talk about the thing that you're scared of. And of course, I'm scared that it would come back. I don't want to have to go through it again, but being able to talk about it and to kind of open the door for other people to talk about it and to let other people know they're supported and feel the support from other people. It's very cathartic. It almost feels a little bit like a form of therapy, I think. It just makes me feel like I'm taking, again, the lemons that were served to me and making some lemonade out of it. I just think it's a way to reframe a really crappy situation. And I'm always in for reframing crappy situations in any way I can.
It's funny. It's not funny. It is funny. Everything I want to ask you, you answer ahead of time. So it's kind of like you're one step ahead. And it's kind of like in high school, we were one step ahead of everything we did. There's a couple things you need to know about Carly. Number one, if there's a couple people out there, my one big thing in high school, and this could show you my maturity level, in high school and as a 47 was to try to get her to curse. 47 years old, and I still am asking her to say bad words. It is a little ridiculous, but I do. The other thing that I have to just put out there is Carly did one time forget to bring her math book to class and had to borrow from Roger.
One
time. Said he was, but in all honesty, Carly, you guys have heard me talk on the podcast about my producer, and I don't really have a producer. My producer is Carly. I'm going to tell you right now how Carly has helped me, and we'll go back. So I talked to her the one day, and I sent her the thank you from Sierra Tucson. And I know what she's been through, and we've talked about, how to approach people with the diagnosis and just being open and, with my point of view with the mental health issues. And I'm wondering, is it the same thing with do you want people, do you kind of just maybe want like a nod of the head? I mean, you can't want to tell the story 6-7 times a day. I mean, what is the proper way to...
Well, you mean if somebody's asking me about
yes,
like
how you're feeling, they heard they heard the news.
Yeah, I think in the beginning it probably bothered me more, but never that much. I always appreciated that somebody cared enough to ask. But I do, there came a time, especially during treatment, when I was like, I'll tell you what, the thing that the thing that didn't get under my skin, but would sometimes drive me a little crazy is I spend a lot of time trying to help people with their fitness, like helping them stay consistent with fitness and building a really strong fitness foundation. And obviously things come up with that and people go through struggles and there's reasons why they can't do their workout and whatever. And people would always say, but I feel so bad telling you this because you're going through something so bad. And that got a little old because, like I said before, it's different experiences, but it's the same feeling. Like you could hate your job and you're feeling just as crappy as I am on the fact that I have to go through breast cancer. Like if you remove the causes of the feelings are the same. So like we can all relate to each other. So that's the only time that, and I can't say like, I understand why people would say that. It's not like I was annoyed, but it just, I think going through something like this makes you just see the world and how you interact with people in a completely different way. And it helps you moving forward because then just gives you a different perspective. So you can help other people in a different way. A better way.
I think you said it, the moderate to severe is pretty much what I hit on with, doesn't matter what it is in that range. It's the feeling that you're feeling at that time and your feelings are not wrong. Right? And I think Carly just said that. You're not wrong. All right. So the last question before I let you go, and then we'll get off and I'll probably send you a couple of instant messages because I'll be lost on something.
One after the other.
Is it true that moderate to severe would still be floundering around in my head if it wasn't for you?
Probably, but I know how the podcast helped me in dealing with what I dealt with. So from your message, I could gather that something like that would help you with what you were going through in your journey. So sometimes you need somebody to like push you a little bit to do it. And like, that's my job. That's what I do with people. I like figure out the little ways to get them to do what I feel would be the best thing for them to do to be the best version of themselves. So that's what I did with you.
You did. And just a little recap of how she pushed me. I reached out to her. We talked for a couple minutes. I mentioned I should do a podcast. She was like, yeah, I think you have a really good idea. So that was me talking. The Jonathan of 2 months ago would have never done a podcast because I wanted it to be perfect and I knew it wouldn't be. So then Carly, being Carly, sends me a text like 3 days later and says, how's the podcast coming? And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? She's like, you're going to do the podcast. I'm like, I'm not doing a podcast. And then we went back and forth like we were, in 7th grade. And then I was like, she's like, just try it. And, I don't know what happened. I filmed the first episode. She helped me put it together, AKA also why she's known as the producer. We hit send and up on Spotify. Now I have a podcast. I actually have many, quite a few now. I think I'm up to 3 or 4 when this airs. But, if it wasn't for you, teaching and coaching like you do, I would not have put this up. So I want to thank you for that. Carly, it's been awesome. It's very funny how the world works. I can remember sitting in Miss Carlucci's class in 10th grade, ninth grade, reading A Catcher in the Rye, and you would know all the answers, and I would look at Roger, and we would say, of course Carly knows all the answers. But I was just happy that I remembered to bring my book that day. And now, all these years later, as much of a pain that I was, we both, because of the journeys we traveled, have kind of ended up here and have really formed a nice relationship. So I want to thank you for coming on and for all of your help with the podcast. And, I wish you nothing but the best.
Jonathan, I'm very proud of you because you remind me, and I said this to you, I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would say this, but you remind me a little bit of me. That's like something I never thought I would say, but I like your hustle, and I think you got a good thing going, and I'm proud of you for making lemonade out of the lemons you got. Good job. Keep going.
All right. And I'm going to post all the information for Carly on my website. If I have the website by then, it should be up. If not, I'm going to post it on my socials. But it's Pray for the Bear. Go out and get it. It's a very easy read. Even I read it, and I don't read.
It's on Amazon.
Okay,
on Amazon.
It's on Amazon. It's Carly Fauth, Fauth. I'll put that on there. It is Chemo Coffee Talk. So if you know somebody who can benefit from that, or if you want to listen to it yourself, go ahead. And also, it is Fit Fun Carly. I did email her something the other day to Fun Fit Carly and didn't know why she didn't get it.
It's a different girl. It's a different Carly.
It's a different Carly doing Fun Fit, not Fit Fun. It's totally two different types of
totally
workouts.
Different. Trust
Nothing
me,
similar.
Totally different.
Nothing similar. So, all right, Carly, have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jonathan.
All right, bye. And that wraps up another episode of Moderate to Severe. Remember, it is okay to not be okay. Mental health is a journey, and every step counts, no matter how small. I hope today's discussion resonated with you and reminded you that you are not alone in this journey. Please do not use this advice medically, as this is just my story and my tales. If you need help, please seek it out from a medical professional, go to a hospital, or call 988, the suicide hotline. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with your friends or family. Let's crack the stigma and keep the conversation going. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and join us next week. Take care of yourselves, and remember that reaching out for help is a sign of strength. Until next time, keep looking after your mental health and supporting each other. This is Jonathan Scott. Have a great day.